welcome to Left Night with Kendra Dossie. And here's your host, Kendra Dossie.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Zach. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing just fantastic. I have been banned from Twitter for 11 hours now, and I am ready to fire off some opinions.
Wait, did you catch a full day ban?
I got it. So it told me I was getting a 6-hour ban. And then once the 6 hours ran up, it was like, JK, you have another 6 hours. And there's nowhere to appeal it to. I don't know what to. So hopefully I'm not just getting 6-hour ban after 6-hour ban. Hopefully this is the last one. Hopefully it's ending soon.
I mean, even if you did get 6-hour ban after 6-hour ban, your brain cells are probably like regrowing from not being on the website. So it might be a lesson.
Here's the thing: is I'm not really that much off the website. I'm just reading the website and unable to respond.
Okay, so you should take a Twitter break before you get sucked into more like Lockheed Martin discourse.
Probably. Oh boy, that we're gonna have to touch on later. Well, how are you this week? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. One thing is on my mind this week. Well, actually, a few things are on my mind.
Okay. Hold on. Wait. Let me do it. Hey, Kendra, what's on your mind this week?
Well, I'll tell you what's on my mind this week, Zach. All right, everyone. So I don't know if you've heard, and I know that there's always lots of crazy news happening all the time. You know, we're not even going to really say this is a good week. As Ice Cube would tell us, it's hard enough just to have a good day, let alone 7 of them in a row. So we're not going to pretend that. But if we're going to try to put a positive spin on it, well, a new world war wasn't started this week. So if we're using that by the Ice Cube standard, the fact that no one had to use their AK means this was a good one. And it was probably closer than you think because Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, became the highest ranking official in at least 50 years to visit Taiwan. Now, we're going to give you a little bit of background to understand the gravity of this situation. We're going to talk about Taiwan, which now calls itself the Republic of China, and then the People's Republic of China. You also need to know about the One China policy that has been U.S. policy since the 1950s. So we're going to go over the basics. Mao comes in 1949, does his thing. Landlords get their last month's rent. And China becomes communist. The previously ruling government, Chiang Kai-shek and the KMT, fled to Taiwan and became self-proclaimed rulers in exile. So lots of people have feelings about that, obviously, and lots of different feelings, but we're keeping it to the 101. Then the U.S. maintained that the Republic of China, aka Taiwan, was real China for several decades following the revolution and instituted a one China policy that recognized all of China as one nation. But Richard Nixon was a bit of a size queen, and he decided that the bigger China, aka the People's Republic of China, was the China that the U.S. should recognize. But since we could not upset international order by deviating from the one China policy, overnight we stopped recognizing the sovereignty of Taiwan and started recognizing the People's Republic of China. At the same time, we could not flat out admit that communist government ruled over a pretty big country in the world, in world affairs. So a certain level of sympathy was maintained towards Taiwan, if not through actual recognition. So while you hear about China not recognizing the sovereignty of Taiwan, technically the US doesn't either. Sure, as time has gone by, there's been a few perverts who write for The Economist that realize the PRC is not really going anywhere currently. But it's still the official stance of the Republic of China that mainland China is being run by a pretender government. So from the point of view of China, as in PRC, Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan is merely an endorsement of the views held by the government of Taiwan, and therefore could be read as an encroachment of China's sovereignty. So even beyond all the tension between Taiwan and China, it's kind of weird for Nancy Pelosi to be like, hey, I'm going to girl boss my way into potentially provoking a world war. That's not very diplomatic. There's a reason why many people in government over the years have not touched this issue, have not visited Taiwan. And it was even recommended by some people here in the US that she should not go. But what makes it especially stupid is that Nancy Pelosi isn't going to Taiwan potentially out of some fervent support of Taiwanese nationalism or brinksmanship towards China. She's going there to talk about her support of microchip production, an industry in which Taiwan is a world leader. So this is very interesting because, Nancy Pelosi may not know much about computers or microchips. She's 82 years old. She might have to call her granddaughter to figure out what's going on. But her husband, Paul, did make a large purchase in the microchip industry days before a House vote on semiconductor regulations. You may associate Nancy Pelosi with not being very strong-willed, like the time she gave Mitch McConnell a hug on the Senate floor, or when she said single-payer is never going to happen. But she's taken on a pretty strong stance, a pretty diplomatically, potentially calamitous stance on this one pet issues of hers, not setting any limits to the types of stock trading that politicians and their families can do. And that's what this seems to really be about. She's willing to bring the US to the brink of a war to skim just a little extra bit off the top. And just like many of her colleagues, there's no consequence of any of this for her. Taiwan has 23 million people living on that island. They could have really faced lots of ramifications of this, but Nancy Pelosi was like, hey, I'm just going to talk about semiconductors. And she is going to ride this all out just fine. But of course, this isn't the only thing she's done. There's lots of other things we could remember her for, like the Good Morning Sunday morning clip, Good Morning Sunday morning clip, or the way she clapped for Trump's speech and liberals said she did it in a girl boss way, or when her daughter made an ominous tweet about faves getting canceled by the Epstein arrest, or when she showed off her 2 freezers full of expensive ice cream and then went on vacation right as a huge thing about evictions was going on, or how she came into the House as a progressive who was supposedly going to change things, or any number of things. But what's most important for her legacy is the one that will be hardest to take away. She is a congressional representative who will leave office richer than she was going into it. And that is our monologue this week, everyone. There's not going to be a commercial break. We're just going to ride it through. We're tired of it.
No, sponsors aren't paying this week.
Sponsors aren't paying us this week. They aren't paying us.
So shoot us some Venmos because we're not getting that.
Also, we'd love to hear what people have to say. So we're going to slide into the next topic. That is things that are happening. We are going to talk about things that are happening. And as always, if you are watching live with us right now, we know we're sorry. We're on at a different time than usual. So maybe people had to jumble around, not able to watch. But if something is happening this week that you are thinking about, please let us know in the chat. Go off. Tell us what we need to talk about this week. Pop off. I'll tell you what I think we need to talk about this week is that the MBTA is dang broken even more. I feel like we already did a story about how the MBTA is broken, and it is brokener than it was the last time we did it. Yeah, it's very broken. Not just, both the subway and commuter rail. It seems to be getting brokener by the second. Lots of things have happened to MBTA. In the past year, there was someone who died because his arm was caught in a door and he was dragged on the red line. There was the orange line being straight up on fire, and now orange means that it's on fire. Recently, there was a runaway train. A conductor's emergency brakes was not working, and he had to ask people to stop the train for him. And I believe the most recent thing is the commuter rail suddenly paused somewhere. I forgot which commuter rail line, but people had to climb over a fence to free themselves from the commuter rail. So what the city of Boston has decided to do is they are just going to straight up stop the orange line for a month. This is going to affect hundreds of thousands of commuters. It's not going to be good. I hope and also people are like, will it actually only be a month? Because it could be way more. Right.
and I hate to do this because we are never wrong on this show, but I do have to issue a slight correction. The city of Boston has zero say on the issue, unfortunately. It is the state. In fact, the city of Boston was supposed to get a seat on the MBTA board going into the next term of it, and the State House axed that. So, first of all, that's one of the most fakakta things about the entire MBTA is that the city. Obviously the commuter rail does serve lots of different parts of Massachusetts, and so it's not like they're the only ones, but the cities of Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Quincy, even Brookline, they have no extra, like they do not have any sort of like extra consideration as the ones for whom this matters in the State House. The entirety. So these assholes in Cape Cod are deciding whether or not we're going to fund the T. It's a very poorly run thing. I mean, obviously, Charlie Baker, I have made it clear, it's on site if I see that man because of what he's done to the T, because of the way that he has chosen to prioritize privatization over and not unlike our first subject of the day. Making a few people an extra quick buck rather than making anything actually work. And truly the most baffling part of this is there's no way that this is news that they're going to have to, if they need to shut down the Orange Line for 30 days, they've known that this is.
Yeah, they knew that the Orange Line was really bad. And maintenance.
And if it was going to come to that situation, why are you waiting until you're going to have bleed over into September in order to shut it down for 30 days?
Yeah.
You'd think, I am somebody who has to deal with the T. I know that students return at a certain point, and the T has more ridership coming into September. And maybe if I'm going to do massive improvements or massive, not even improvements, just keeping things running, I would want to make sure that's all done in August. There are people are going to be moving on September 1st with the Orange Line down. Like, how is this not thought through?
It's so bad. It's so bad. It could have been prevented. And like, whenever something ridiculously bad happens, I'm just like, if people wanted to prioritize, especially in the time of climate change where, climate, like the US military is probably the person that really drives climate change out of everyone. But people are going to need to make some personal adjustments. Like, it would be good to have a working transit system and encourage people to use it. But that didn't earn people money. So Charlie Baker kept, cutting down on service, which how many people depend on the T? It's at least 1 million people. It's not a small amount of people,
It's probably close. Yeah. And
it might be.
And how many people would like to depend on the T, but cannot because service has been made so unreliable.
Exactly. Yeah. There was a woman who wrote an article or op-ed, it wasn't an article, in the Globe that was like, hey, I have dutifully taken the T for years, but I was on the Orange Line when it was on fire, and it was the second time the Orange Line, or the second time a train I was on fire, so I am going to take Uber so that I do not need to be in a flaming car once again. And I can't blame her. That's the most sensible reason to take Uber, because you've been in 2 subway cars that have been on fire.
Right. Which is, I think that's a valid point, but also most people cannot afford to take an Uber as a daily.
Exactly. There's also that.
Commute.
I think she said that in
the people who will be stuck in the flaming box of Orange Line cars will be the ones that are the least able to avoid things that are going to catch on fire, It's sort of like a bell curve thing where if you're like very low on the income level, you are stuck on the orange line, which is going to catch fire. And then if you're very high on the income level, you will get a Tesla, which will catch fire.
So yeah, only people who have about median earnings will remember.
Only the most median income earners will be able to avoid fire catching. And really, the ones at the top, it's just sort of voluntary. But
yeah, I think so. That woman who wrote the op-ed, her name was like Jennifer something, which is the most vague information I could give you. But I think she did mention like, yeah, I have the money to take an Uber, but of course, like it's like, like I shouldn't. It sucks for people who don't have the money for this, and this entire thing should have been prevented. Like the MBTA should try to fix it, like reach out to people and be like, hey, this is ways to improve, and like pay people more so there's not like stressed out, pay conductors more and stuff so that they're not stressed out, so you could attract more people. Like it's like a public service, and I think there's always a push to run public services like the post office or public transportation, like their businesses. And it's like, no, the point of it is that like if we put money into that and stop treating it like a business, then we're going to see business grow other places. Also, like as a socialist, it should just be fucking great. But.
And yes, I feel mixed ways about congestion pricing for automobiles, but at this point, I don't think that there's really any other choice other than we need to like there needs to be like prohibitively expensive tolls that you pay to drive a car into the city, because we need to fund this thing. It needs a lot of funding now, and it's just unbelievable just how long even like the most ambitious like T projects, they're like, oh, by 2025 we'll have a new we'll have a new Green Line station.
Yeah, but like Union Square had been in the works for years. I didn't realize it was literally like 15 years.
Oh yeah. Like people were talking about it when I moved here. I remember that. Yeah, the current plan, and I don't. This isn't like the top of, I think, of what are like top priorities for the MBTA. But there's a plan to have a commuter rail station, what they're calling West Station, that is going to be sort of behind like the BU athletic fields in Austin. They're putting a West Station there, and the current plan for that is 2040. Like what is? How can that
going to exist as a city? Like, well,
right? What are you planning for if you're planning to do something in 2040? And it's just it's very And Pavai saying time for Big Dig 2 Electric Boogaloo. Listen, sure, fine. I like just do it like a functioning country might. Like I've seen those videos of China where they have a public works project, and then there's like 60 excavators all going out in one night, and then suddenly you have like construction done. Like just do something like that. There's like you have any actual like any incentive or willpower to make things better.
I know. Yeah. Urban planning in this country is a mess. It's just, and Boston is supposed to be the second best planning in the U.S.
I would be interested to know how they came about it. It's just because
I think it's because most places in America suck. Like that's right. It.
And most places in America were built like the mass expansion of most American cities is post automobile. So it's only like a handful of like cities in the Northeast that were built for actual like people walking around at some point in the 19th century. Like, so places that have a legacy that existed when people had to walk places are built a little bit better. It's not. Yeah. just left Seattle, and the Space Needle was built in like a year to open for the World's Fair. Yeah, I mean, definitely.
We should do that with the subway. Like, we should do that with the subway. I know there's some bureaucratic processes that I don't like know about that might make it take longer, but like we you know, and in terms of that, like it's getting, it's an emergency. Like that's
and obviously you have to excavate far less stuff underground to build a Space Needle. But it is still like, where there's a will, there's certainly a way. Yes. And today we can't build a parking lot in that time. Well, we shouldn't be building parking lots because that is just more cars.
Yeah, that's building. We should actually be like reclaiming land from parking lots for other uses.
Yes. So keep it going in the chat if there's anything else you think we need to cover, or if you have any other fun Nancy Pelosi-isms that you'd like to remind us of before we go out.
Anything,
I guess we have to talk about Lockheed Martin, and do we have to?
Do we have to? Everyone who watches the show is probably on Twitter. They probably know.
Yes.
I just want to say, like, yes, living in America, we're all probably complicit in, imperialism in some way. I'm definitely not like trying to posit myself I'm not trying to say I have like a moral free life, but I think we could draw a line in the sand saying like, hey, don't work for Lockheed Martin. I think that's fair. I think, if you want to be an ally to colonize people, I think that's a fine place to start. Not a huge, just don't apply to jobs there. Like it's not a huge.
Yeah. Don't work for Raytheon. Don't work for Northrop Grumman. These are very and don't be in the military. But the point is like people are like, oh well, so does that make you automatically bad forever if you were in the military or if you worked for Lockheed Martin and stuff like that? And I do believe that everybody has the capacity for redemption. I like to the core of my being. That's one of my fundamental beliefs. But it's not something you just like say, hi, one redemption, please. It is a materialistic thing. You do something to achieve that redemption. It is not just
like, sorry, sorry, bro, sorry for working at Lockheed Martin. I need health insurance.
And to be honest, we weren't really even there in terms of the way people were justifying it as like, not even like I worked there in the past. Like it's a thing like, oh, it's perfectly fine to be working there because you need to live and survive. And it's like, well, okay, people in Yemen also need to live and survive. So
it's there was someone who was in the military and also worked at Lockheed Martin who was like, oh, like I'm a person of color who like had to feed a family, and like that's definitely hard. But he compared himself to like a comfort woman, which is not appropriate. Like, yes, there are not many choices under capitalism, but we live in like we probably have the most choices out of most people. I think
also the way that like there's like, oh, I had to feed I had to do that. If that's the case, then every person of color who has a normal non-killing job should get like a daily parade. If it's that hard to avoid working at the murder factory, like then everybody who makes a choice to go and work at a Kohl's should get like we should be thanking them for their service every day.
Of course, and I guess it was like also interesting because of course healthcare is important and it's hard. If you are able to be like a programmer or a more high paid position at Lockheed Martin, you could probably get a job somewhere that isn't a defense contractor. Like you could work for a nice startup. You might not make as much money, but you'll probably be able to survive. I think it's very interesting how many people were painting this person working for a defense contractor as a life or death situation as opposed to the people who are, killed by the weapons of that defense contractor. Like, it's like, I don't know. It just, it's frustrating for me.
Right. And obviously it implicit in the language, it frames the lives of people in the Imperial Core as more important than the lives of people in the places that are affected by the weapon.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. It's like if you went to like, and I think someone also said like, oh, like, why do we keep talking about these hypothetical like brown people? And it's like, no, they're not hypothetical. There are people dying each day. They're real. They're real. Just because you like don't want to think about them doesn't mean that they don't exist.
Right. Yes.
But yeah,
I'm sorry, I have object permanence, and I can't. If I'm not looking at something, it still exists. Like,
yeah, it was just very sad, and I think, I think it was caught up in a few other issues because like this person who was outed at working at Lockheed Martin was like outed by like I think an alt-right newspaper, which obviously we do not support the alt-right. That was bad. You shouldn't dox people for the most part. Like the way this information was given probably could have been given in another place, but that does not change the fact that you shouldn't work at Lockheed Martin. Just don't work there. Don't work at Amazon. Don't work.
If you're going to work at Lockheed Martin, which you shouldn't do, you should not then make your entire online presence about scolding other people for the decisions they make and how they affect marginalized people.
Yeah. There is, I think some people framed it as like there's a lot of, I think there's like the idea that like the more marginalizations you have, that like somehow like the more marginalized you are, it means that no one could critique your actions, and that's not a good way to look at activism or look at, that's not what the River Collective meant when they meant identity politics. It wasn't like, oh, I'm like disabled and I have this and that, so it's okay for me to work at Lockheed. That's not what solidarity is. So of course, you have to make a few sacrifices. I don't think not working at Lockheed Martin is a big one. Right. Honestly, I've managed to do it.
I'm so good at it.
I'm very good at not working at Lockheed Martin. And that's actually part of the reason, like, entertainment is like also potentially a very like scummy industry, and like there's always issues coming out with it. But like at the end of the day, me making jokes, I'm not building war machines. Of course I have to duck and kind of dodge and figure out what it, my own complicity in that thing. But I'm the goal is not harming children. So
we should all be looking for ways that we can do less harm and build more good things. No matter how much we think we've done that, we should always be looking for more. And if you are working for a defense contractor, I don't think you've even taken the first step.
Yes, basically. But it is 8 p.m. So, Zach, do you have any closing remarks for us today?
No. My Twitter's back now, so.
So you're gonna tweet the closing remarks. Okay.
Yes. So
all right.
And yes, follow me on Twitter. And then if you follow me on Twitter, you can also then in my bio find my secret Twitter where I just post about wrestling.
Do it up. Hell yeah.
So yes. And
all right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching. And stick around 9:30. There's going to be honorable mentions with Rachel Jane and
you got time. Make yourself a sandwich or something.
Yeah, make yourself a sandwich. Get some food.
Watch a 90-minute movie.
You could, no, definitely do that. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Oh.